I'll tell you next, they're going to have generals unionized. The NLRB might rule that. And I wonder how our next guest, the great General Michael Hayden, former director of the CIA and the NSA, would react to that. Hello, General.
Hey, Steve, how are you? And I don't think we'd like a union. I'm sorry.
I just got finished with the story that the NLRB decided that college athletes could unionize. I mean, I can't imagine the chaos that's going to ensue with that.
But okay.
All right, let me ask you as we look at the landscape here, and Obama talking again about the Russian situation today overseas, and but what is the possibility that Ed Snowden helped the Russians thwart intelligence on Putin's land grab? In other words, could he have given them an advantage in any way, shape, or form, do you think?
Well, I mean, here's the really straightforward answer. I don't know, and that's always a good answer for an intelligence officer. so you don't have whomever you're talking to, giving more confidence than he or she should into the intelligence officer's judgment. Now, so I really don't know, but this is a discoverable fact. So I've seen the reports where it was very difficult for us to intercept communications in the terms of the Russian movements in preparation for the Crimea. So just going on the press accounts, this is pretty easy if you're inside government. Did the Russians change communications protocols, ciphers, codes, code names, and so on from the time Mr. Snowden arrived in Moscow until today? That's a discoverable fact. It's probably a fact that our government already knows. And so this is pretty straightforward, unfortunately, not for you and me outside of government, but for those folks inside government.
Yeah, and just the fact that that question is askable, and that the answer you gave first, I don't know, but the questions that you more specifically asked to my question to you really are pretty scary.
Well, no, that's right, and that's why people like me, people with my background, people still in government, Steve, are so concerned about these Snowden revelations. I mean, the ones we do know that he's made public, because signals intelligence is an incredibly fragile form of intelligence. I mean, to hide troop movements from imagery is actually pretty hard, particularly when you're talking about big troop movements. But to hide these kinds of things from signals intelligence, I mean, all it requires is for you to hang up the phone or turn off the radio. And so, again, it is so fragile that you've got people like Keith Alexander, the outgoing director of NSA, me, and others saying the damage Snowden has done overall to American intelligence collection is serious and irreversible.
Yeah, that is a massive statement, very impactful statement. Let me ask you about, I've posed this question to so many people, and people have different answers. I asked Congressman Ted Poe yesterday if he thought that if he agreed with Doug Feith, who had told me that Feith believes that Vladimir Putin believes or could believe that he could destroy NATO without a war, because of disunity, because of lack of will, if it comes to defending a NATO ally in the Baltics. And Poe said, I can't guarantee, I don't feel sure enough to say that NATO would fire a weapon to defend Estonia or one of our allies, one of the people under that treaty in that region. What do you think? Do you think that,
wow.
that's what Putin feels? And do you think that that's what would happen if Putin went that far?
Well, first of all, if that turned out to be true, if NATO in any way was unable or particularly unwilling to defend a member, then the alliance is truly over. And that applies. It applies to the new members. Frankly, it applies especially to the new members. I mean, if NATO is unwilling to defend, for example, the Baltic states or Poland, then the alliance has no value. I actually think an early effect, however, of what Putin has done is to kind of put a little more cohesion into the alliance. I mean, You're not seeing a whole lot of folks complaining about American surveillance right now in Europe because frankly they're a bit frightened by what seems to be unpredictable Russian action. So maybe one of the near-term effects is to give the alliance a little bit more of cohesion than it's had in the past several years.
Let me ask you this: speaking of American spying, Obama saying that he wants to take these phone records away from the NSA and leave them with the phone companies, and then if it's needed, they would be subpoenaed. Do you think that that's going to happen, and do you favor that?
It is going to happen, and on balance, I guess I'll give you a very forceful. It's kind of okay, because here's what's happening, Steve. NSA right now, if you read the press accounts, only gets about 30% of that metadata we're talking about, but it gets to keep it for 5 years. Now under this new program, and this is the one that the House Intelligence Committee is now supporting, close but not identical to the president's program, the phone companies keep it. And the phone companies keep it only for as long as they currently keep it, which for some of them is a year and a half or so. But it's exhaustive, Steve. It's everything. And so, although NSA has got to ask the question now through the phone companies, it's asking a question, frankly, of a much larger database than it ever had access to before. Now, the one point, you use the word subpoena. If you make this too complicated, going through a court, that actually might be harmful. The House bill allows NSA to do it under a generalized warrant, and the court kind of gets to look over its shoulder, kind of double-checking its work to make sure it's not abusing this authority. I think that's the far better approach than to have to wait for a warrant and a subpoena from a court every time you want to get the phone companies to check a number.
Right. Okay. Let me let you hear something that Jimmy Carter. He's been making the rounds. He's got a new book, and he made this accusation the other day. I want you to hear it and respond, if you will, General. Here we go.
Sure.
People say, well, you're listening to everything in there or doing that. They're wrong. Now, you brought up
former President Jimmy Carter saying he writes letters instead of sending emails because he's worried that you're reading his emails.
Well, we're not. So he can now go back to writing emails. The reality is we don't do that. And if we did, it would be illegal and we'd be found, I think, held accountable and responsible.
Of course, that's not Jimmy Carter. That's the current head of the NSA who is responding to Jimmy Carter's accusation. Was you agreeing Carter was off base in saying that?
Oh my God, yes. First of all, we're not reading everybody's emails, and we certainly wouldn't target the emails of a U.S. person, including former presidents of the United States. And so, former President Carter is in a position of responsibility, and we've kind of lit the fires of people being overly afraid of an agency simply trying to defend the American people. So I think it was very unfortunate that President Carter said what he said. Now look, there may be other intelligence services out there in other countries who are interested in his emails, but I can assure you, NSA is not.
And he went so far as to say he sends everything by regular mail, or is it snail mail as it's known, because he's afraid of that.
Yeah.
Well, you never know. But wait, one final question, taking it back to the beginning, I guess. Where do you think? I mean, the President of the United States has made it clear that what's done is done in Russia, and there's really no going back. Where do you think this ends? I mean, is Putin looking at the landscape? Is he going to take a deep breath, as Hillary likes to say? Where do you think this stops?
Yeah, two or three thoughts here very quickly. Number one, his taking the Crimea is a severable act from him moving that first Russian soldier into the eastern Ukraine. I mean, the Crimea is traditionally Russian. Russian history is there. The population is there. The Russian church identifies with the Crimea. And in fact, the Russians living in the Crimea aren't even ordinary Russians. By and large, they're Russian military retirees. It's like Tampa is in the United States.
Right.
Now, it's a bad thing he did that. a very bad thing, and particularly a bad thing the way he did it. And we can't encourage any kind of activity like that in the future. Steve, he got out of the penalty box far too quickly for what he did in Georgia in 2008. And so we've really got to take very strong action against him now, because this is a violation of international norms. But it's, in the Russian mind, in Putin's mind, it's different than going elsewhere into the post-Soviet space. It's like I said, that first infantryman, that first motorized rifleman that crosses
changes the whole
border,
landscape. Yeah.
That changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah. General, always a pleasure and an honor to speak with you, sir. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Take care. That's General Hayden, ladies and gentlemen, the former head of the CIA and the NSA. Always great to get his insight. And I loved, by the way, very frightening answer and possibility that I brought up to him as to whether or not Snowden could have just, given Russia so much information that they changed everything, and that our intelligence wasn't able to figure out what was coming because of that fact. I mean, that's a frightening concept to think of. All right, folks, when we come back, it's the Malzberg panel. You will not want to miss it, I assure you, right here on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.
We don't just talk about the news, we talk to those making news. This is the Steve Malzberg Show.